Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you are already a subscriber, thank you so much for coming back. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Francia, and on this channel, we do a little bit of everything. But lately, I've been talking about true crime stories, so here we are. Welcome back to another episode of True Crime, where we delve into the dark and complex stories that have shaped our understanding of the criminal mind. Now, just a reminder, I do not mention the names of the victims in my videos, not because I want to make them seem unimportant or that I want to highlight the perpetrator. Not at all. I don't want to mention the victim simply because, out of respect for the family, I don't want to say anything that would offend the family. And I never want to make the family feel that I'm not doing their family members justice in the way that I present the case. Because sometimes when we're talking, we're just going through the story, and we're not always conscious of how we're presenting the victims. We just mention their names and carry on. The perpetrator, on the other hand, I don't give two shirts how I present them. So that's why. So with that being said, today we'll be exploring the life of one of America's most notorious serial killers. Okay, this man is responsible for taking the lives of 33 young men and boys between the ages of 14 and 26. Okay, that's crazy. Between the years of 1972 and 1978 in Chicago, Illinois. Who exactly are we talking about? Let's get into it. His name was John Wayne Gacy, and I say was because he's no longer with us, thank God, and it's one of those endings that I like, okay? Do not judge me. John Wayne Gacy was born March 17, 1942 in Chicago, Illinois, to John Stanley Gacy and Marion Elaine Robinson. He was the second of three children, with him being the only boy in a working class family. His father was a World War I veteran and worked as an auto repair machine guy person, and his mom was a homemaker. Gacy's early life was marked by various challenges. Gacy was raised Catholic and was said to have a very close relationship with his mother and two sisters, but had a troubled relationship with his alcoholic father, who was often abusive verbally and physically to the family. The dad would talk down on Gacy all the time, calling him dumb and stupid and always comparing him to his sisters. I hate when parents compare. Don't do that. You have kids. They're different. Deal with it. Anyway, sorry, I went places. My siblings are good, okay? Me not so much. Anyways, one time when Gacy was 4 years old, his dad beat him because he accidentally messed up some car parts that he was working on. And when his mother tried to shield him from the abuse, the dad would call him a sissy, a mama's boy, and said that he would probably grow up queer. In 1949, when Gacy was about 6 or 7 years old, he got another whooping from his dad after he and his friend were caught sexually messing with a little girl. This whooping I'm not really sad about, because what are you doing? You don't mess with a little girl. Where I'm from back when I was being brought up, if this was caught happening, both parties, all parties involved would get a whooping. So I'm not mad about that one. Also, that same year, a family friend began to occasionally sexually mess with Gacy, but he never did tell his dad because he was afraid that his dad wouldn't believe him and that he would blame him for the whole thing. That is so sad. It was said that in spite of their relationship, Gacy loved his dad and wanted nothing more than to be accepted by him. But unfortunately, it's like he was never good enough for the guy. Poor Gacy in that sense, though. Gacy suffered from a heart condition as a kid, which made him not able to play sports. So he was a little chubby, okay? And in fourth grade, he began to experience blackout, and he would be hospitalized a number of times because of these episodes, which would cause him to miss school a lot and have terrible grades. Because they had a hard time coming to a conclusive diagnosis, his dad thought he was faking the whole thing, and one day he decided to tell him, hey, I think you're faking the entire thing, while Gacy was laying in the hospital bed. Ugh. Father of the Year. These early experiences would later play a significant role in shaping Gacy's troubled psyche. As a young man, Gacy was known for his charm and friendliness and was active in his community. At age 18, Gacy became involved in politics and worked as an assistant precinct captain for the local Democratic Party candidate. That was a mouthful. The precinct captain, I didn't know what this was, so I had to look it up. It's basically the middleman between the voters and the party nominee. So if anything is going on with the votes, or, they have questions, concerns, and all that good stuff, they would refer to Gacy, and Gacy would then work with you get it. So because Gacy could never do anything right in his father's eyes, even after he got that low position, his dad was still a hater. He was criticizing him and calling him a patsy. Like, sir, stop hating. Another thing I noticed from reading about this guy is that their relationship was very weird, okay? Because it was said that his dad brought him a car. Like, you act like you don't like your son, but then you brought him a car. But he kept the title in his own name until Gacy paid off the car, which I don't have a problem with that, because it's a thing. A lot of people do that. I get that. But then if he told Gacy to do something and Gacy didn't do it, he would confiscate the keys for days. And I'm like, he's 18. He's technically paying for the car. So technically that is his car. I didn't like that. That was weird. And so, like, about 2 years into paying the car, when he was about 20, Gacy got tired of his dad doing that stuff to him. He decided to get an extra set of keys. And when he did that, it's now funny. When he did that, the dad gets so petty that he went and he removed the distributor cap from the car and kept it for 3 days. Sir, how petty must you be? That's crazy. So when he finally put it back, Gacy was like, I am tired of this. So he got in his car with $136 to his name and drove to Las Vegas, where he intended on staying with a cousin. Then he found work in the Las Vegas, I cannot say that word, Las Vegas, ambulance service, and later on transferred to Pole Mortuary, where he worked as a mortuary attendant for 3 months, watching morticians embalm bodies and occasionally serving as a pallbearer. Gacy apparently ended up not staying with the cousin, and technically he didn't have a place to stay, so they offered him a cot behind the embalming room, and later he would admit to getting into the coffin of one of the dead teenage male and cuddling and caressing the body. Ew. He said that it went into shock afterwards, and that the experience just creeped him out so bad that he ended up returning home right away. Ugh, sir. Shortly after his return home, Gacy enrolled in college for business and graduated in 1963. He took a job as a management trainee position with a shoe company, and in 1964, the company transferred him to Springfield, Illinois, which is where he met his first wife, to work as a salesman before he was eventually promoted to department manager. Around this time, Gacy joined his local community group called the JCs, which is a leadership training service organization that focuses on business development, management skills, individual training, community service, international connections, etc. It's a lot. Gacy also had his second homosexual experience that year when a colleague from the JC group got him drunk and performed orals on him, according to Gacy, of course. Now, he was a charismatic, smart, hardworking young man, because by 1965, which is about a year after he joined the JC group, he was promoted to vice president and was named the third most outstanding JC in Illinois. Gacy would later on relocate to Waterloo, Iowa, because his father-in-law purchased 3 KFC restaurants there and made Gacy the manager with a very lucrative salary, plus share of the restaurant profits. So that was really good. I want my father-in-law to, do stuff. Anyways, Gacy was doing so great that it was said that he opened a club in the basement of the home, and he would have his employees come over to play pool, drink alcohol. It was said that Gacy hired teenagers of both sexes, but he would only be friendly with the male ones, and sometimes he would make sexual advances, and if they refused him, then he pretended that he was just joking or that he was testing their morals. Of course you were. Later on, his wife gave birth to 2 kids, and Gacy even finally earned his father's respect. When his parents came to visit him, his dad privately apologized to him for everything, saying, and I quote, "Son, I was wrong about you," end quote, as he shook Gacy's hands, which made Gacy's day, well, his whole entire life, actually. I can only imagine because he's been waiting for this. Gacy described the spirit of his life as perfect. I bet it was. While in Waterloo, Iowa, Gacy also joined their local JCs. He invested a lot of time in the organization and would often bring KFC to the meetings. He also did great fundraising work for the organization. And in 1967, he was named Outstanding Vice President for the Waterloo JCs and served on the board of directors. This guy don't know how to stop. Although he was doing great work, Gacy and other Waterloo JCs were also deeply involved in drug abuse, pornography, prostitution, and wife swapping. Ew. Bunch of weirdos. In August of 1967, Gacy sexually assaulted a 15-year-old boy whose father was a local politician and a member of the JCs. Gacy lured the 15-year-old boy into his home by promising to let him watch porn. When they got there, he gave the boy a whole bunch of alcohol, got him drunk. They did watch porn, and then he convinced the boy to engage in oral with him, telling him, quote, "You have to do it with a man before you start doing it with women," end quote. The heck he does. No, sir, you do not. You do not. Gacy was also out here tricking several teenage boys into believing that he was commissioned to conduct sexual experiments for scientific research, and he would pay them $50 to participate in his little experiment. What scientific research are you doing, sir? That's making you experiment on little boys? You psycho. A few months later, the little boy told his dad about the assault, and the dad immediately contacted the police, and they arrested and charged Gacy with sodomy. Gacy denied the charges, of course, and demanded to take a polygraph test, which he failed. Dum-dum. On August 30th, while he was awaiting trial, he promised one of his employees to pay him $300 if he went and beat up the little boy and scared him out of testifying. The employee succeeded and beat up the boy, but then the little boy reported the incident to police, and they arrested the guy, who ended up confessing that Gacy was the one that paid him to assault the little boy. So police then charged him with hiring somebody to intimidate a witness. On September 12, Gacy was ordered to have a psychiatric evaluation, and 2 doctors concluded that he in fact had antisocial personality disorder. So basically he was a psychopath, and they decided that it was highly unlikely for him to benefit from treatment, which meant that he was always going to have conflict with society. So why was he not? These are the things that made me mad. Like, you know this about him. Had they not dropped the ball, most of these people would be here today. We knew he had antisocial personality disorder, and he was not likely to benefit from treatment. So the guy was gone, right? And yet we allowed him to roam freely in society and had him unalive all these people. Anyway, so they did also conclude that he was mentally competent to stand trial. And on September 12, 1968, Gacy pled guilty to the count of sodomy against the 15-year-old. But he said that the 15-year-old boy offered himself to him, and he was just acting out of curiosity. Sir, you're a whole grown man. Why was a 15-year-old trying to make you act out of curiosity to do stuff to him? Stop it. Stop it. So, of course, no one believed him, and on December 3rd, he was convicted of sodomy and sentenced to 10 years in prison. And that very same day, his wife was like, sayonara, peace out, homie. She petitioned the court for divorce and requested to keep the home, their property, sole custody of the children, and alimony. The court ruled in her favor. Good for her. And their divorce was finalized on September 18, 1969. And this was the last time that homeboy ever saw them. Girl, you go, okay? Now, Gacy was one of those people who could win anybody over with his deceptive persona, right? And he was also ambitious. He was hardworking and charismatic. So it wasn't long before he became a model prisoner. Within a few months of his incarceration, he already got the position of head cook. He also joined their JC chapter in there, and in less than 2 years of him joining, he increased their membership from 50 to 650. That is crazy. He also made sure that the inmates got an increase in their pay for their work, and convince somebody, I don't know who, to install a miniature golf course in the yard where the prisoners hang out. He even received an award for all of his hard work, right? This guy did not know how to stop. In June 1967, Gacy was denied parole, and then to prepare for the second scheduled hearing in May 20th of 1970, he completed 16 high school courses and got his diploma in 1969. I was thinking it must have been different back then, because didn't he go to college and got like a business degree? Why is he completing high school now? But anyways, things must have been different back then. On Christmas Day of 1969, his father died, and Gacy was devastated because like they had just made amends and he finally earned his dad's respect. So things were on the up and up for him and his dad. And now he's dead. And to make matters worse, he requested to have like a supervised day type situation to like attend the funeral, and they denied him. Yikes. On June 18th, 1970, Gacy was released on parole, big mistake, with 12 months probation after only serving 18 months out of his 10-year sentence. I don't like this. I don't like this at all. It was a huge mistake because, hey, we're sitting here. I also have this thing where it could just be it's my opinion, and I could be wrong, but I feel like certain people shouldn't be paroled early, depending on the crime. Because if you like unalive someone or you grape someone, I don't think you should be paroled. I think you should stay in there for whatever your sentencing was. You don't get to be a model citizen and get out early. You stay in there and you serve out your time, because there should be no paroling a murderer and a rapist. That's just my opinion. Anyways, upon his release, his friend picked him up from the jail to give him a ride, and he told his friend that he would never go back to jail. Who knows what he meant by that? And that he was going to work very hard to make sure he established himself. So then, as part of the conditions for his probation, he relocated to Chicago to live with his mother. And he, in fact, hit the ground running, because shortly after he got there, he got a job as a short order cook. And in 1971, Gacy also started a part-time construction company called PDM, which stands for Painting, Decorating, and Maintenance. With the approval of his probation officer, because he had a curfew as part of his probation conditions, he worked evenings on his construction contracts while working as a cook during the day. One thing about this man, though, is that he was a hard worker. You could not deny his work ethics. He was a true hustler, and he busted his behind. He was able to expand his business to include projects like interior design, remodeling, and landscaping. And by the mid-1973s, Gacy had made enough money with his company to be able to quit his day job as a cook and focus full-time on his construction business, which he continued to expand. Successfully, I might add. Remember earlier when I said they made a huge mistake by paroling this guy early? Well, get this. On February 12, 1971, which is less than a year after he was paroled, he was charged with sexually assaulting a teenage boy after he lured the boy into his car from a Greyhound bus terminal. He drove him to his house and attempted to make the boy perform a sexual situation with him. Unfortunately, the case was dismissed because the boy failed to appear. Who knows what may have happened? He probably threatened the boy, scared him, or unalived him. Who knows? We don't know. Okay? Because this guy was evil. He was so charismatic that he had friends everywhere, and people were so quick to believe in his innocence, even law enforcement folks. That's crazy. On June 22nd, he was arrested again and charged with aggravated sexual battery and reckless conduct for using a sheriff badge to lure to lure a teenage boy into his car and forced him to perform oral on him. But once again, the charges were dropped. So frustrating. Because it turned out that the boy ended up blackmailing him. It's probably not even true, but the police wasn't doing their job anyway, so we still don't even know. Another side note, I'm not sure on this. I probably should have researched it, but I didn't. But comment below if you know. I could be wrong, but when you are out on parole, if you violate the conditions of your parole, do you not go back to jail? Isn't that how this works? Comment below if you know, because I feel like this boy this man kept being arrested, but then no one is taking him back to jail for violating his parole. However, it was said that the parole board was never notified of these incidents. Again, somebody dropped the ball. And then his parole ended. Oh, God. His parole ended on October 1971. And then a month later, they sealed his criminal records. Why? Then homeboy was free. He was free to do whatever he wanted. That cannot be good. And it would turned out to not be, indeed. Stay with me, okay? With his mother's help, Gacy bought a house where both he and his mother lived. Once again, with his seemingly friendly personality, Gacy was very active in his local community. He was very helpful with his neighbors. He would loan them construction tools. He would plow snow for the entire neighborhood free of charge. He even volunteered to perform as a clown for local parties, political functions, charitable events, and children's hospital. He would also throw some of the best annual summer parties, which would have up to 400 people in attendance, including some major political forces and business folks. So the guy was working. Like I said, the guy was doing what the guy was doing. He worked so hard and made some really good connections that he even got to meet and take a picture with the First Lady, Rosalind Carter. I hope I'm saying her name right. Now, get this. In the picture, he was wearing an S pin, okay? Which means that the person wearing that particular pin had to have special clearance. How did he get special? Did somebody not do a background on him? How did he get special clearance if he has a criminal record? He was incarcerated. Who did not do their job? Somebody needed to be fired. A few people needed to be fired. In August of 1971, Gacy reconnected with an ex from high school. The two became engaged and she moved in with him along with her 2 daughters. They were married July 1st, 1972, and the mom moved out shortly thereafter. On a good Mother's Day in 1975, after they got done doing the deed, after they just came back from Pound Town, Gacy then informed his wife that he was bisexual and that this would be the last time they went to Pound Town. What? He then began spending most of his evenings outside of the house and would return early in the morning, saying that he was conducting business meetings. With who, sir? With who? At this hour? And that he was working late my ass. His wife also noticed that he was bringing a lot of teenage boys in his garage and in the early hours of the day. So she decided to do some digging and found a lot of gay porns, men's wallets and IDs, all that good stuff in the home. So when she confronted Gacy about it, he became very upset and told her that it was none of her business. Excuse me? Sir, we are married. It is very much my business. Your business is my business. My business is your business. Our business is our business together. What are you talking about? Ugh, this guy. In October 1975, they got into an argument and the wife asked him for a divorce. They agreed for the wife and the 2 daughters to stay in the house, though, until February 1976. And on March 2nd, their divorce was finalized, which meant that once again, Gacy was free to do God knows what in this house that he was now no longer sharing with nobody. That cannot be good. It was said that Gacy mostly hired young men and high school students for his construction business. He would proposition his employees for sex or insist on sexual favors in exchange for letting them borrow his car or financial assistance or promotion. He would also threaten them at times and say things like, quote, "Do you know how easy it would be to get one of my guns and kill you, and how easy it would be to get rid of the body?" End quote. What? Who talks to their employees like that? Why would you? You know what? Gacy got contract in different places and would travel a lot for work. In 1973, he took this teenage boy with him to Florida. And while they were there, Gacy gripped the little boy in their hotel room. And when they returned to Chicago, The little boy went to his house and dragged him out in his front yard and beat the crap out of him. He beat his ass. The wife witnessed the entire thing, and then Gacy told her, because at the time they were still married, Gacy told her that the little boy attacked him because he refused to pay him for poor quality work that he did for him. Lies from the Book of Lies. In May of 1975, he hired a 15-year-old boy. The boy injured his foot and was at home recuperating when Gacy decided to pay him a little visit like the good boss that he was. They drank a bottle of wine, watched some porn, and out of nowhere, Gacy decided that he was going to wrestle the boy to the ground, handcuffed him behind his back. Now, this boy was a high school wrestler, unbeknownst to Gacy here. So, thankfully, the boy was able to free one of his arms while Gacy was out of the room. And when Gacy came back, the boy wrestled with him, got the key from him, and freed himself, and then put the cuffs back on Gacy. And Gacy tried to threaten the little boy, but then he calmed down and promised that he would leave if the boy freed him, which the boy did, and then he left. The boy continued to work for him, but he didn't make any more attempts to assault him. On July 26, 1976, Gacy picked up an 18-year-old hitchhiker and offered him a job with his PDM construction company. On August 21st, the boy moved into Gacy's house, and the next day was the boy's 19th birthday, so they had some drinks to celebrate, and Gacy even dressed up as a clown to entertain the little boy. Oh, how very nice of him. Then he tricked the little boy into letting him handcuff him, and then he tried to grape the little boy. The little boy kicked him in the face and freed himself. It didn't say, but I'm guessing the little boy didn't have another place to stay because he didn't move out. So a month later, Gacy went back into the little boy's bedroom and tried to grape him again. And the little boy fought back. And Gacy then said, quote, "You really don't know who I am. Maybe it would be good if you give me what I want," end quote. What? The boy still fought back and did not let him grape him. And Gacy finally walked away saying, "You ain't no fun. Yeah, let him be lame. Let him be lame, sir." The boy finally moved out on October 5th, and he left the company, but he would occasionally work for Gacy like for 2 more years. So those are the ones who got away because he unalived, like I said, 33 of them between 1972 and 1978. His crimes went undetected for years, largely due to his ability to blend into society and his manipulation of those around him. His victims were a mixture of people he knew and random individuals from the bus station or the streets with promise of a job with his PDM company, drinks, drugs, or money for sex. Some of his victims were also grabbed by force, and others he conned into believing that he was a policeman because he carried a sheriff's badge. I don't know where he got them, but I guess you can find those anywhere. I don't know. And one of those spotlight siren thingy on his car. And once inside his house, Gacy would give his victims drinks and drugs. He would get them to trust him. He would do magic trick where he would handcuff himself behind his back with the key in his hand, but unbeknownst to his victim, and then he would magically free himself from the handcuffs. He would then offer his victim to show them the trick, and because they trusted him, they allowed him to put the handcuffs on him. Once he would have them restrained, he would grape and torture them, and then he would proceed to perform his last trick, which was the rope trick, and he would strangle them to death. He would keep their bodies under his bed for like 24 hours before burying them in his crawl space, and he would occasionally pour quicklime to make the decomposition process go a lot faster. Gacy killed for the first time on January 3rd, 1972. So according to his account of what happened, he lured this 16-year-old boy into his home from a bus terminal. The little boy told him that he had to get back to the bus station by noon to catch his next bus. Gacy promised him that he would get him back there in time. The little boy agreed, so he drove him around town, and then they went to his house. He claimed that he woke up that early morning to find the boy standing in his doorway with a knife in his hand. He then jumped out of the bed, and the boy instantly lifted his hands up like in a surrendering gesture. And as he was doing that, he accidentally cut Gacy's forearm. Gacy then twisted the boy's arm, took the knife away from him, banged the boy's head against the wall, and kicked him into his closet. The boy fought back and kicked Gacy in the stomach. Gacy then grabbed the little boy, wrestled him onto the floor, and repeatedly stabbed him in the chest until he was no longer breathing. He then left the little boy there dying, grabbed the knife, went to the kitchen to wash it, and that's when he saw that there was like breakfast out. The boy was in the middle of making breakfast. There was eggs out, bacon, and all that good stuff. So he probably just absentmindedly carried the knife into the psycho's bedroom to ask him, hey, how you like your eggs? And you took his life. What a psycho. He then buried the boy's body in his crawl space and covered it with a layer of concrete. And later in interviews, Gacy would say that he felt totally drained after killing that boy, but he also experienced a mind-numbing orgasm. And that's when he realized, yeah, I'm just gonna keep taking lives because this is the best orgasm. What a crazy bastard. 2 years later, in 1974, he took another victim. On July 31st, 1975, an 18-year-old PMDM employee disappeared. His car was found abandoned with his jacket and wallet inside and the key still in the ignition. Gacy later confirmed that he led the boy into his house, sat on the kid's chest for a while before strangling him. He kept the body in the garage with intention to bury him later in the crawl space, but his wife and stepdaughters came home earlier than expected, so he buried him under the concrete floor of his garage. Oh my God. Gacy stated that 1975 was a really good year for him because that's the year his business expanded and also the year that his second wife divorced him, which meant he had the house to himself and he could increase the frequency of his excursions for sex with young males. And that's also when he committed most of his murders, was between 1976 and 1978. Shortly after his divorce in early 1976, Gacy abducted and unalived an 18-year-old boy whose body he buried under the dining room. May 14, he took another 15-year-old boy and then another 14-year-old also disappeared within that same time frame. Turned out that the 15 and 14-year-old boys knew each other and he buried both of them in the crawl space. Investigators believe that he unalived both of them that same evening. That's crazy. On June 3rd, Gacy abducted and unalived the 17-year-old boy and buried him under the spare bedroom. 10 days later, he unalived another 16-year-old boy and buried him in the crawl space. On August 15th, he abducted and unalived another 16-year-old boy and buried his body in the crawl space beneath another 17-year-old boy that he had just unalived. It is believed that Gacy had unalived 2 unidentified males between August and October of 1976. And on October 24th, he abducted and unalived 2 friends. 2 days later, he abducted and unalived a 19-year-old construction worker who actually worked for him, and he buried the body under his master bedroom. Between November and December of 1976, Gacy unalived a 21-year-old young man. He was not reported missing until later because his family believed that he had moved to California. Oh, how sad. On December 20th, 1976, a 17-year-old boy disappeared after leaving his girlfriend's house. He was also an employee of Gacy's. His car was later found abandoned, and his family contacted his employer, Gacy, of course, about his whereabouts. He told them that the young man has expressed a wish to run away from home. He also claimed that he received a voicemail from the boy, but when the family asked him to play the message for them, he said that he accidentally erased it. How convenient. On January 20th, 1977, he took another life, a 19-year-old boy, and he sold his car to one of his employees for $300. 2 months later, on March 15th, another 20-year-old had disappeared. He told his family that he found work with a local contractor. He was buried in the crawl space above someone else's body. On July 5th, another 19-year-old boy was unalived. By the end of 1977, Gacy had unalived 6 more young men between the ages of 16 and 21. On December 30th, he abducted this 19-year-old college student at gunpoint. He drove him to his house where he raped, tortured, and repeatedly drowned the young man until he became unconscious. And he would make statements like, quote, "Aren't we playing fun games tonight?" No, you're not, sir. Thankfully, he didn't kill that one. Several hours after he was done torturing him, he drove him back to his workplace and released him. And he warned him not to talk to the police and that they would not believe him. Later on, the boy testified that he was in so much pain that he begged Gacy to just kill him and get it over with, to which he replied, quote, "I'm getting around to it," end quote. Oh my gosh. So the young man reported the assault anyways, and police questioned Gacy, who admitted to having had sex with the boy, but insisted that it was consensual. He said that he didn't pay the kid the money that he had promised him, and that's probably why the kid is pressing charges against him. So the police believed him and filed no charges. I just feel like everybody kept dropping the ball when it came to this guy, and nobody wanted to do their job. The following month, Gacy had unalived another 19-year-old boy and buried him in the crawl space. And he would be the last person that was buried there because he ran out of space to bury folks in his home. On March 21st, Gacy lured a 26-year-old into his car, chloroformed the guy, drove him to his house where he raped and tortured him with lit candles and whips, and he repeatedly chloroformed him in and out of consciousness, and then he dumped the guy in the park. He was unconscious but alive, thank God. The guy later reported the assault to the police, but they decided not to investigate Gacy. Oh my gosh, they're so frustrating. So the guy then decided to take matters into his own hands. He remembered the type of car, the type of expressway in that particular side of the road that they drove on, I guess, when he was being abducted. So he and his friend, they did a stakeout in that area, and they ended up spotting Gacy's car, followed him to his house, and Gacy was arrested on July 15 and faced trial for the assault and battery against the guy. It didn't say that he was convicted or anything, or that he did time, and I'm guessing he didn't, because he later confessed to unaliving and throwing 5 more bodies in the Des Plaines River because, like I said, he ran out of space in his house. Gacy's downfall began December 1978 when the disappearance of a 15-year-old boy led the police to finally investigate Gacy. So what happened was, on December 11th, 1978, Gacy went to meet with this pharmacy owner to discuss a potential remodeling deal. While they were talking, this 15-year-old boy, who was a part-time employee at the pharmacy, was sitting close where he could hear the conversation. And Gacy made sure that he mentioned that his firm was hiring teenage boys and giving them a wage of $5 per hour, which is twice as much as the boy was making at the pharmacy. So shortly after the meeting was done, the boy's mom came to pick him up at the pharmacy, and it was the mom's birthday. They were supposed to go out to celebrate and have dinner and whatnot. The boy told his mom to wait for him and that he was going to talk to some contractor about a job and that he would be right back. He left around 9 p.m., never to return. When the boy didn't return, his family filed a missing person report with the Des Plaines police. The owner of the pharmacy told police that Gacy was most likely the contractor that the little boy left the store to go talk to. So this lieutenant, whose son attended the same high school as the missing boy, decided that he was going to get to work, and thank God for him. Okay, thank God for this guy. Upon checking Gacy's criminal background, it was revealed that he had an outstanding battery charge in Chicago and had been imprisoned in Iowa for the sodomy of a 15-year-old boy. Finally, someone was working. The following evening, the lieutenant plus 2 other Deplin police officers went to visit Gacy at his home to see if he knew anything about the boy's whereabouts. He admitted that he did ask one of the youth working at the pharmacy whether there were any remodeling materials behind the store, but he said that he never offered him a job and that he had only returned to the pharmacy shortly after 8 p.m. because he had left his appointment book there. Gacy also told officers that he couldn't make a statement at the moment because his uncle had just died, but promised that he would come by later to do so. And when the officers asked him how soon, he could make it down to the station to give them a formal statement, Gacy responded, quote, "You guys are rude. Don't you have any respect for the dad?" End quote. "No, asshole, they don't. Just like you don't have any respect for the living." The fork? At about 3 o'clock in the morning, Gacy finally made it to the police station, covered in mud, claiming that he had been involved in a car accident. But what really happened was that after they left, he loaded up the missing boy's body into his car and went to dispose of it. And on his way back, he got into some trouble with the car and that he had to situate himself. And that's why he was looking all dirty and stuff. So obviously they sent him away to go get cleaned up. And when he returned to the police station later that day, he once again denied involvement in the boy's disappearance and repeated that he had not offered him a job. He insisted that he had only returned to the pharmacy because he got a call from the owner letting him know that he had left his appointment book at the store, which at the time Gacy didn't know, but the detectives had already spoken to the owner and he denied ever having called Gacy about an appointment book. They asked Gacy to prepare a formal written statement detailing his every move for that December 11th. Finally, somebody was not buying his BS, Lord. Thank you. They were able to obtain a search warrant on December 13 because they suspected that Gacy might be holding the missing boy at his home. And when they searched his home, they found a whole bunch of weird stuff like police badges, starter pistols, syringes, porn books, a whole bunch of stuff, pills like Valium, driver's licenses, a blue hooded parka, underwear that were too small for Gacy. They also found a class ring engraved with the initials JAS and a pharmacy photo receipt in the trash, along with a 36-inch section of nylon rope. They also confiscated his car and had him on surveillance as the investigation continued. They looked further into the case of that guy that he had dumped in the park after raping and torturing him. They spoke to his former wife. They also traced the ring back to another victim, and they talked to the mom of yet another victim who confirmed that several items were missing from his son's apartment, including a Motorola television. Furthermore, they interviewed one of his employees. They were able to get some evidence suspected to be human hair from his car, and they also had 3 trained search dogs, and one of them laid in the passenger seat, which was indicative of a death reaction, like meaning that someone had died here. During the course of the investigation and surveillance, Gacy had gotten comfortable with the detectives, trying to be his charming self. He would invite them into his house, offered them drinks. He would take them out to eat at restaurants. He would, try to be friendly and talk to them about business, his marriage. He would talk about clowning. And one time during the conversation, he even made a remark saying that, quote, clowns can get away with murder, end quote. Why would you say that? So the officers played it cool. They were just, doing their part, waiting for things to do what they do. By December 18th, Gacy realized that this thing wasn't going to go away and that he couldn't talk. He couldn't charm his way out of this one, so he started to display signs of stress from the constant surveillance. He was not shaving, he looked tired and anxious, and he was drinking heavily. So that afternoon, he drove to his lawyer's office to have them prepare a lawsuit against the police department, demanding that they seize their surveillance. That same day, investigators was also able to trace that receipt that they had found in his kitchen to a 17-year-old girl. She was a colleague of that boy, that last boy who went missing, and the girl stated that she had borrowed the boy's parka earlier that evening, and she had the receipt in the pocket before she returned it to him as he left the store. On December 19, investigators began to put together a whole bunch of evidence to obtain a second search warrant for Gacy's house. That same day, Gacy's lawyer filed the civil lawsuit against the Des Plaines Police Department, and the hearing was scheduled for December 22nd. It was said that afternoon, Gacy invited the surveillance detectives inside his house again, and this time one of them went to the bathroom, and he said that he noticed the smell of death. Oh my gosh, I don't know what that smells like, but I can only imagine. The following day, on the evening of December 20th, Gacy drove to his lawyer's office to have a meeting and discuss the progress of the civil lawsuit. He looked anxious and disheveled and immediately asked for a drink. So they give him a bottle of whiskey and he immediately drank 2 cupfuls. So his lawyer, came up to him and asked him like, hey, what's going on? What did you want to talk about? But he had a magazine in his hand and he sat the magazine on his desk. And Gacy picked up the magazine, pointed to the front page of the magazine, and just blurted out, quote, "The boy's dead. He's dead. He's in a river," end quote. And then it was like the floodgates of his conscience, if we can agree that he has one, opened, and he started spilling the entire content of all of his guts. He admitted to having been the jury, the judge, and the executioner of many, many people. He told his lawyer that he murdered at least 30 victims, and most of them were buried in his crawl space, and he had disposed of 5 other bodies in the river. He claimed that his victims were males, prostitutes, hustlers, and liars. And because he had drank so much alcohol, he fell asleep in the middle of his confession. When he woke up several hours later, his lawyer, who was in disbelief, told him that he needed to go see a psychiatrist for an eval. He dismissed the lawyer's request to see a psychiatrist, telling him, well, I can't think about this right now. I've got things to do. Then he left his lawyer's office to attend to his business. As detectives were following him, he made several stops after he left his lawyer's office, and one of those stops was a gas station where he went and gave a bag of cannabis to the workers that were there. And because police was afraid that he might be up to no good, they decided to arrest him on possession charges just so that they could keep him in custody while they wait on their second search warrant. After they obtained the second search warrant, they informed Gacy that they were about to look for bodies in his crawl space. He denied that he buried the boy there, but he confessed to having killed somebody in self-defense whose body was buried under his garage. When they got to his house and in that crawl space, within minutes, they uncovered flesh and a human arm bone. So one of the investigators said that they could go ahead and charge him with murder. And he also added, and I quote, "I think this place is full of kids," end quote. Yeah, more than 20 of them, sir. Once the police informed Gacy of what they had found in his crawl space and that he would be facing murder charges, he decided to quote unquote clear the air and confess to everything. All the murders, all 33 of them. He drove them to the area where he dumped some of the bodies, and then he drew them a map of his house, like the crawl space where he had buried the other people. Yeah, what a crazy, sick bastard. On February 6, 1980, he was brought to trial and charged with 33 murders. His lawyers Head Gacy spent a lot of hours with psychiatrists trying to determine whether or not he was mentally competent to stand trial. And Gacy was also trying to convince the doctors that he had multiple personalities. He claimed that he had 4 personalities. One was the hardworking, civic-minded contractor. One was the clown. One was an active politician. And then the other one was a policeman called Jack Henley, whom he referred to as Bad Jack. Please. They were just trying to have him plead not guilty by reason of insanity. But that didn't work. It was determined that Gacy was competent enough to stand trial, which he did, and the jury, after it was all said and done, deliberated for an hour and 15 minutes before they found him guilty of 33 charges of murder. When it was time for sentencing, the jury deliberated for more than 2 hours before they sentenced Gacy to death for each murder committed. His execution was set for June 2nd of 1980. Gacy appealed his sentence a number of times while he waited on death row for 14 years to no avail. And on the morning of May 9th, 1994, Gacy was transferred to Stateville Correctional Center to be executed. His last meal was a bucket of KFC, French fries, some shrimp, fresh strawberries, and a Diet Coke. And on May 10th, 1994, at 12:40 in the morning, Gacy was put to death by lethal injection, and he was pronounced dead at 12:58 in the morning. It was said that his brain was removed for further examination and to be compared to other serial killers for similarities, but I couldn't see what they found. But this guy was a sicko. It was also said that his last words were "kiss my ass," but that was alleged. The lawyer said he never said that. There's a lot more information on this case, but that's all I could fit into this one video that took me the entire week. It was so long. There was so much information. But that is all that I have for you guys today. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. And please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in my next one. But until then, I hope to see you in the comment section. Bye.